Howdy-ho, Andrew, aka Calfier, aka Shadowson here. Welcome to the Onion Buns and welcome to another episode of Tales of Neverwinter Nights. So we finished off last week with Mavralyn defeating that horrible name that I really don't want to... Tyboraneth. Where did they come up with these names? And anyway, she had defeated him in battle and he had sunk to his knees defeated. And now we're going to continue on with that storyline. So sit back and enjoy. Prisoner by Mavralyn. Mav simply looked down at him with a grim expression. You now feel the true power of Loth, the power she has given me. He tried to think, to move. No! He shouted before losing his concentration. He tried to rise and stumble away from Mav as his hand reached towards the last spot where he left his lady. Mav had this all planned quite neatly as she hit him full force with the full power that Loth entitled her. The sheer raw power and evil burned away the remainder of his tunic and cloak, capturing his body and soul, binding him unable to move from sheer pain as all went dark. When Ty returned to consciousness, he found himself bound and forced to stumble after the swiftly moving Yathrin. The ease with which they slipped through the hills unchallenged let the Yathrin know that she traveled the path Loth wanted, constantly tugging at the rope that held the half-drow turned paladin. They made their way at an exhausting pace. Upon reaching the outskirts of Tribor, the priestess scanned the area for any who might try to stop her. No one walked the city streets at late night. Once again, she yanked at the rope to indicate the two would continue their journey. Soon the travelers found their way to the ruins of Birun. Again, they paused only so Mavralyn could check the vicinity for any who may try to stop them. The place held only the ghosts of people that had once lived there. Heading further north, the two finally reached the outer edge of Long Saddle. Ty, weak and stumbling from the fast pace, tried to slow the Drowist down and asked in a falsely cheerful tone, "Where are you taking me, Mav? What's the hurry?" Still pulling on the rope, she answered in a calm, detached voice, "You are to be sacrificed, Ty." His eyes grew wide in horror as he realized just what his fate would be. "Nay, Mav, don't do this to your old pal Ty." "Why? What have I done that you wish to see me dead?" A sharp bark of laughter exploded from her lips as she stopped so suddenly that the paladin almost stumbled into her. "Nah, Ty, it is nothing you did, but what you are," she exclaimed. "I knew you before I became drow. I had fond feelings for you then, so because of that, you were chosen for this sacrifice. If you cared for me then, what of now? I have a wife who knows not where I am. If you still have that fondness, why don't you let me go and I'll forget all this ever happened," chuckled Ty with false bravado. "Sacrifice." Tugging on the ropes, Mav started forward again and replied over her shoulder, "Nah, it does not matter what my feelings are. You will be given to Loth." The paladin's heart sank at these harsh words as they entered the hidden door that led deep underground. Once past the Drider guards, the Yathrin headed directly to the dark stone altar found within the underground temple. The evil that permeated this ancient place seemed to weigh down the soul of the young knight. Pausing before the altar, Mavralyn turned to the paladin and used her innate power of suggestion. "You won't try to escape, nor struggle against my will, Ty," she spoke softly. The knight merely nodded in agreement. With another murmur of arcane words, the bindings dropped away from the paladin. Murmuring a short incantation, she wove a spell of apathy about him as well. Then the priestess turned back to the altar and knelt before it. "Loth Tumala, Jal Altranzum Exudas. Loth be praised, all victory is her will." Pulling an obsidian dagger from beneath her robes and a small golden chalice from her pack, they quickly sliced open the flesh and filled the chalice with blood, stopping the flow with a simple healing spell. And cleaning the shiny blade, she set it aside and pulled the packet of herbs out. Adding these to the gold cup and stirring the mixture slightly, she called to Ty, "Come and kneel here, next to me." Unable to resist the power of the Yathrin, Ty moved forward to kneel beside her. Silently, she handed the cup to him and with a gesture indicated he should drink it all. The taste of blood seemed strange and loathsome at first, as he continued to drain the contents. The mixture of blood and herbs began to grow on him. With the last drop, his eyes began to redden, in the way of his drow ancestry, and a lust filled his mind. The potent liquid fired his blood with the need for killing, and his body felt a need for release from the energy that built within. Mavralyn calmly ordered the male to lie upon the altar. Without a thought of who he was, Ty complied readily. Rising to stand over the tense form before the Yathrin leaned over to kiss him, gently tasting the blood still upon his lips. "You will serve Loth well, Ty," she whispered before driving the obsidian dagger into his chest. Quickly she carved into the flesh before her and reached into the cavity to rip out the beating heart. Holding it aloft, she chanted once more, "Loth Tumala, Usta Bella Dos Exel Nindel Bibel. Loth be praised, I honor you with this gift." When the last word left her lips, the heart burst into black flames before her. Dancing fingers of fire leapt from her hand to the dead male lying on the altar. The acceptance of the gift filled Mav with elation as she watched the fire consume both. When the dark flames died, nothing remained of Ty but ashes. A rose from Relentar. Once again, the Yathrin felt the favor of the dark goddess fill her with power. Without a backward glance at the ashy remains of Ty, Mavralyn left the ruins and returned to the surface. Slipping quietly into the gilded horseshoe, she knew the second daughter of Relentar was nearby. Though the strange bond she shared with Erelani, Mav sensed anger mingled with pain, filling her mind. Upon entering the private room, Mav walked in on a tense situation. Erelana stood with her back to a stranger that seemed vaguely familiar to Mavralyn. Realizing where she knew the stranger, her eyes widened slightly in shock at seeing the spirit of Devon apparently alive. Spying the mistress, Javars, the two communicated in the silent language of Drow. Now informed of what occurred, Mavralyn motioned to Javars not to interfere. Both watched as bitter and angry words passed between Devon and Erelana. "I have retrieved the rose from where Midnight placed it to return it to you, Erelana," Devon cried. "What would I want with that rose, Devon?" Erelana laughed mockingly. Fire burned in Devon's eyes as he lifted his hand, casting a bolt of lightning. In a puff of smoke, the rose disappeared. Mavralyn gasped, as did Javars. Javars stood, wanting to go to the Yathrin side, but Mavralyn stayed her with a look. Knowing this scene would end badly, Mavralyn muttered a few arcane words, touching the heart-shaped amulet so recently given to her by Relentar. She summoned the assassin. The sudden flash of light had not startled Erelana, and she instinctively readied her snake weapon. Remaining in a defensive position, and with the venom in her voice, retorted, "That was not the rose, Devon. Your heart is in the hands of the Velgala Jabuk." "What deceitful plot is this that you and Tarl contrived?" Devon snarled, as he unsheathed his weapons and continued. "Then you still harbor feelings for that fool who doesn't know one end of the sword from the other?" Immediately angered by Devon's word, Mavralyn's eyes flashed and she hissed, "Who is the fool and who is the master? You are dead and Relentar still lives." Her whip of fangs writhed in agitation as her anger communicated itself. Stepping closer to the spirit-turned flesh, Mav spoke with the ice in her voice. "Perhaps you should teach this wall a lesson, Eri." Erelani's hand moved to her snake weapon as Mavralyn looked on coldly, wanting her to strike. With the pleading expression, Devon stared at Erelana directly and commanded, "Do not continue this, Lana." "Do not continue? It is not I who first readied a weapon," she snapped as she raised the weapon. Before she could strike, Devon dropped to one knee. His hand grasped the hilt of his dagger tightly as he said to her more gently, "I only took on this form to seek thee out, Lana. If thee had no feelings for me, there is no reason for me to remain. I will return to the spirit plane." With one graceful movement, Devon plunged the dagger into the void that would be his heart. A startled, "No, Devon!" escaped her lips as Erelana fell to her knees, reaching out to support him as his body fell to the floor. The misplaced anger that brought them to this end left her. Try as she might, Arilana could not heal her friend. Even as she held him, his body transformed back into spirit state. She reached out to him as he had done so often in the past, but in an instant he disappeared. A cry of anguish escaped from Arilana, and a single tear streamed down her cheek. Mavralyn turned to Javaris and told her to leave, so that she might speak to Arilana privately. Turning back towards Ari, Mav saw that the Atherin communicated mentally with another. She cried to Mavralyn, "He will not let me speak to him. I do not understand. Why has he done this?" As confused by what happened as Arilana, Mavralyn had no words to answer her sister mentor. Another brief mental contact occurred, then Arilana spoke softly, "This is not what I wanted. I shall miss him." At that moment, Ralatar slipped quietly out of the shadows. He bowed to Mavralyn, and with a knowing glance, she nodded in the direction of Arilana. Seeing Ares still kneeling in the spot where Devon fell, the assassin moved towards her. He placed his hands on her shoulders to let her know he was there. After slipping off her cloak, he grasped her arms and lifted her to him. Arilani turned slightly and leaned into Ralatar, saying, "Do not lecture me tonight, Tarl." He touched her cheeks lightly and spoke gently, "Na, Lana, no lecture tonight." A stab of pain touched Mavralyn's heart as she slipped out the door, leaving the two alone. How different the bond is between them. Neither will ever show weakness to the other, yet both draw on the other's strength, she thought as she closed the door behind her. And that's where we're going to stop for this week. You have seen a glimpse into drow sacrifices through a role play, because everything I read there was a role play. The locations Mavralyn wrote about, those are out of Neverwinter Nights on AOL. I had to chuckle at the B-Run because I freaking hate B-Run. Like I said, I was a big-time PvPer, and B-Run had my most hated PvP fight. And I still swear at the names of Joe and Pike Arc because they kept dragging me to the damn fire beetles. It was a nightmare. It took me forever to master that fight. And I don't know how many times I died to those damn things. So it's just a nightmare zone. But yeah, it was the drow roleplay for the sacrifices was really quite in-depth, intricate, detailed. And you just got a brief glimpse of what would go on. Like that sacrifice that Mavralyn wrote about there would take probably about 5 hours in-game to fully do. Even longer with travel, because especially if you were traveling with 8 or 9 people, nobody ever got to the area where they did the sacrifices alive. You know, somebody out of the group would always die, and they'd get bounced back to the start of the zone, and then you just sit there waiting for them to try to get to your party. So, yeah. Anyway, interesting stuff. Like I said, I love reading this stuff. For me, it's a trip back down memory lane. For other people, I don't know what they get from it, and I hope they enjoy it. I hope you enjoy it. But for me, it's a trip down memory lane. And that's my video for today. If you like the video, leave a like, a subscribe, and a share. I'm trying to grow my channel, and a like, a subscribe, and a share does me wonders, and I do appreciate it. Takes 1 second to subscribe, costs you absolutely nothing, helps me immensely. Just hit the subscribe button on the bottom of the screen. If you're watching this on Rumble, please follow my channel. Always feel free to leave a comment. I encourage everybody to leave a comment. Let me know what you think. Do you enjoy it? Don't you? Everything. If you have your own role plays, please send them to me. And as always, pew 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 and shit. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Bye.